And so here I am now, I'm starting my family. I'm pregnant for the first time, and there's a 4-hour commute. And I said to myself, like, I do not want to live the rest of my life this way. But I knew even then it wasn't like the commute itself. It was just the fact that I was like toiling away at a job, which I know wasn't like for me. It was at that moment that like I had my breakdown, cried in the car, cried when I got home. I think that moment in the car where I had that realization, like there is no way I can do this now that I'm starting a family, really put me on the path to find out more. I said, there has to be something else out there. So like you said, if you got to put it in park, reverse, neutral, if you got to make that left turn when you thought you were going to make a right turn, it's okay. I think the biggest thing that we all can do is just to keep going.
Hey, this is Raina Campbell, your Chief Dream Driver, and welcome to the No Parking Podcast, where through conversations and discussions with creators like yourself, we'll find interesting approaches to help you take your dreams out of park, put them in drive, and ride towards success. Hey, Dream Drivers, welcome to episode 181 of the Dreams and Drive podcast. I am so excited about this week's guest, JamilaSouffrant. Jamila is a podcaster, a blogger, a money coach, and the founder of JourneyToLaunch.com, where she shares her journey to reach financial independence and helps others do the same. And on today's episode, Jamila is going to share the details of how she was able to put her financial independence goals in motion. And it's funny because we talk about this on the podcast, but as a kid, she didn't really have a specific career in mind, but she knew she wanted to make a lot of money and didn't want to work for anyone. However, years into her 6-figure career in real estate investing, she had this epiphany moment where she realized this was not the life that she wants to live. Over the next few years, she discovered the financial independence world and started creating a plan to help her reach financial independence by age 40. I think you guys will be really interested in hearing about the smart financial decisions she made early in her career, why she launched Journey to Launch, tips on how you can create your own financial independence action plan, and other strategies to becoming more money conscious. There's so much that we talk about in this episode. Plus, I think you guys will find Jamila extremely relatable. She is a wife. Her and her husband saved $169,000 in 2 years. They're debt-free besides their mortgage. She also is a mom of 3 young children, 2 little boys and a little girl, and currently lives in New York City. So there's a lot that you'll get out of this episode, so you make sure you tune all the way to the end. And remember, if this is your first time listening, or if you're not already subscribed to the Dreams and Drive channel, please hit subscribe wherever you're listening, whether you're listening on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever. Hit subscribe so that you get notifications every time we have a new episode. And if you're an Apple Podcast, please make sure to leave us a rating and a review. I love to read reviews on the shows. This week, we don't have any new reviews, so make sure that you go and write one so that you can hear yours in the next episode. And if you enjoy this episode and you find Jamila's tips to be so insightful, so helpful, please share this. You can screenshot and share on social media. We are Dreams and Drive across the board. So make sure to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and use the hashtag Dreams and Drive when sharing as well. Hope you guys enjoy this episode. Let's hear from Jamila. Hi, Jamila. Welcome to this episode of Dreams and Drive.
Hey, Raina. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited for this episode to happen. Like, I feel like it's been a long time in the making, and we've been like friends offline and in our, podcast related things. So this was destined to happen eventually, right?
I think so. I think it's all been leading up to today.
Yes. So, I love to start our conversations going back in time. So tell me, like, who was Jamila the child? What was inspiring you back then? What was the world like through your eyes?
Yeah. So I was always very bold and ambitious. And it's funny because I was born in Jamaica. I stayed back in Jamaica while my mom came to the U.S. to New York to establish herself. And so I was with my grandmother for those like first 2 years of my life, then came here and grew up in Brooklyn, New York. And my mom always, like when she talks like about me or she like looks at what I'm doing now, she's just like, I always knew you'd be like just doing something different. Like you always walk to the beat of your own drum and like more traditional. You're Jamaican. So, like more traditional, like people would be like, oh my gosh, like what is she going to become? Like she's just so unruly. unruly. Right. And so crazy and doesn't keep still and has all these imaginations. Like, like you need to tame that. Like they should probably tell my mom, like, oh my gosh, like, you need to tame that. But luckily my mom always encouraged me, and she helped channel all that energy into creative things and into like gymnastics and swimming. So I was always just busy in the mind, busy like doing things. And so that's helped me today. But I feel like I've always been a child of just like exploration and boldness and fun.
It's funny how you talked about your mom seeing like that you were going to be different and that you always had this energy in you. I just talked to my mom before we got started because she's staying with my grandma who's sick, and like she predicted what I was going to say to my grandmother. And she was like, I know my child, Raina. I know my child. Right. So I feel like this mothered sense, which you probably like with your own children, you probably already see like a little glimmer of something of what they're going to be later on in life. Right. Or just kind of their energy. You can sense that. Right.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps me as a mom because now, I have 3 kids. I have a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-month-old. And all my kids like already have strong personalities, and especially the 4-year-old. So like coupled upon like just him being like 4 and wanting to do whatever he wants, like everyone says that knew me, like my mom, they're like, he's like you, but on another level. And whereas like I came out pretty okay. So I'm just like, what? I just have to guide his energy. Like, he's going to be okay. He has, he's so bold and he's like not afraid of anything. And so instead of me looking at that like, oh, that's, something that's disrespectful or something I need to tame, I look at it more as I need to channel this energy because luckily someone helped me channel that energy and look where I am today.
So what was the dream back then? What kind of energy were people helping you channel? Like what were they channeling it to?
Right. And I would say this is mostly my mom. Like she is the one that really, really built me up to who I am today with the confidence and experiences. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't have a lot growing up, coming here as immigrants. She didn't know much. She didn't have much. But what she did know was that she wanted to do her best. And so while she didn't have like a lot of money, she'd take me to the library, every week, and we take a lot of books. She encouraged me to
take a book and read.
Yes. She encouraged me to read like every night. And so I had a big imagination, and I would always like write and like think of stories in my head. She also put me into swimming and gymnastics, which really helped, I think, with like discipline in terms of like being focused on something and being afraid to do things and doing it anyway. So that I think started very young because gymnastics, like you're doing all these tricks and you just have to like trust the process, trust the practice, and that it will like come to light when you have to compete. So all those little things she was able to do for me really, really helped me today, I think, in general.
So did you have a dream? Like, was there something that you said, when I grow up, I want to be?
It's interesting. So I never had specific like dreams or goals of what I would do. Like if I had them, they always change. So one moment I wanted to be a lawyer, then I wanted to be a writer, then I wanted to be, just a businesswoman that like made a lot of money. Like what it all came down to, I always knew that I wanted to be my own boss, work for myself, and just do what I wanted. And so I find it interesting because I like growing up, even in my 20s, I always like thought like, wow, like I never just had that one thing. How some people just know what they want to do. Mm-hmm. Like a child. I never had that. I just knew I wanted to be free. Like I didn't want to grow up and be like working for someone else and struggling. That's the one thing I didn't know.
I remember when I was younger, I once told my parents I wanted to be a stripper. Only because like, you like learn new words like in school, right? And like it must have been like 3rd or 4th grade, and someone's older brother or older sister told us what stripping was, and you got money for dancing. I'm like, oh, I want to do that. I like money. I like dancing.
I'm sure that went over very well with them.
Listen, I had to write, I will never say thick. It was just so funny. All right. So you went to Adelphi, right?
Yeah, I went to Adelphi.
What was the whole like mindset going into college? Like, did you have a game plan? Did you were you gaining a sense of yourself and, the future life you wanted?
Yeah, that's a like great question, because I can honestly say that. So my choice to go to Adelphi was very simple.
Money?
Well, they gave me the most in scholarships, and I got accepted into the honors college program. And because Adelphi, for those who are not like in the New York area, it's on Long Island. So it wasn't that far from where I lived. So I figured, I can have the away experience, but I can always come home on the weekends or when I needed to. And, it's funny because like if you look at like the list, like the full list of colleges, Adelphi is like one of the first because of their name, AD, Adelphi. And I'm like super, and I don't want to say lazy in that way because it's something that I'm finding is actually like a superpower of mine, is where I don't go against the grain. Like I don't make things harder for myself. And so I was like, oh, Adelphi, they came to my school. They want to like give me the most money. So they came, like the person who was like doing admissions came to my school, had a talk, met me, said, oh, apply to the honors college. And I did. So they gave me the most money. Like they were not that far. And so I really looked at a couple more schools, but I didn't stress myself out over the whole experience. I just said, you know what, this feels right. I'm just going to do it. And so I ended up going there and didn't really know again what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to make a lot of money. So I majored in business management with a specialization in finance.
Okay. So how did that turn into you starting a career in real estate?
So I went to Adelphi, and luckily this I think was one of like, there are like pivotal points in everyone's life that helps put them on a path. So while I was in my freshman year, I found out about this internship program called Inroads, and Inroads helps place minority, college students into Fortune 500 companies with internships, and they are paying internships. And so I applied to that as soon as I found out about it. And luckily, so my freshman year, that summer, I got accepted to work for a company, and they accepted me into actually like the IT department. So it's Fortune 500 companies, like they're paying you money. Like, so you're making a lot for being, an 18, 19-year-old. And so I got accepted into the IT department, but I knew right away I didn't want to stay in that department. And what Inroads did is that every year, like you could come back to that company if they wanted you or if they had the funds to do it. It's changed quite a bit since then, but that's how it worked back then. And I knew that I wanted to eventually like work in investments because that's where the money was. Again, I had no like,
so you like dollar bills. You always like the dollar bills.
Exactly. I knew I always wanted, like my whole thing was I wanted to be a millionaire. I didn't know how or what or why. I just wanted to have money. And so I went into the IT field just as my internship, and then a second internship year. So then my rising sophomore year, is that how you say it? Yeah. So when I was my next summer internship, I was still in the IT department, and I was like, no. Cause I know what's going to happen. If I stay here for another summer, if I do get a full-time job offer, they're going to offer it to me in like IT. And I knew I didn't want that. And so I called and I tried to like get switched into the investments internship department. And they were like, well, that's all the way in New Jersey. So all my internships up to that point were in the city. And this internship, if I were to switch, this like track would be in New Jersey. And I remember going to New Jersey, meeting with the internship coordinator over there. And I said, listen, I don't care how far it is. I'm willing to travel because I know that this is the field. I want to be in investments. And I made my way over in my last internship year into the real estate investments department. And then luckily they wanted to hire me full time out of school. So by the time I was going back for my senior year, I already had a job offer and knew I'd be working there after graduation. And so it was really good because then I was able to work in the investments department and start out kind of in that realm.
So Brooklyn to Morristown, New Jersey. Now that is a commute. That is a commute, right?
Yeah, it was crazy. So, it's funny. So when I was starting that commute, like, because that was years ago, I was that was like when I was like 22. I'm 35 now. So years ago. And my commute was still like an hour, but it wasn't as bad because, I was living actually closer to like how to get to the city. Like my whole just living situation was different.
Okay.
It really set me up to really just like weather the storm with this commute that I've had forever, which recently has changed.
And it's a reverse. It's like a reverse commute. So probably you're going against the traffic, right?
Yeah, that was a good thing. So I was like traveling from New York into New Jersey, but it was, again, like you said, reverse traffic, but it still took like an hour each way at that time to do it. And as the years went on and traffic patterns changed and I moved deeper into Brooklyn, it took a lot longer.
So, just looking at your LinkedIn profile, right, I could see that you kind of grew in the ranks, right? You were climbing the ladder at your company. During this time, though, like, were you happy or were there were you starting to get desires to pursue other career paths?
Oh, Raina, you are doing your research, looking at the LinkedIn profile.
Yes, girl,
So, yeah, in my 20s, remember, I had always said I wanted to just like make money, and I knew I didn't want to work for anyone. So even when I graduated, I was super like grateful for the opportunity, but I said to myself, you know what? I am not going to work for anyone past 30. I didn't know how I was going to do that, but I just said that I wasn't going to do it. And
Wait, can I pause you for 1 second? One thing that I'm noticing is that you're so goal oriented. I really admire that. Okay.
Well, thanks. Going. Yeah. So I just said, I'm not going to do this, right? I'm not going to work for anyone past 30. And so in college, my best friend and I, we started an online magazine. And so I started like these little things that I thought would be my next like thing that would help me kind of just launch into like, you know, entrepreneurship and working for myself. So
making money, right? Making money.
Right. So I started an online magazine in my college years. It was like an online magazine for Black women called Empress Magazine with my best friend. And we did that for a few years and it never took off. But again, it was like I was working full time, but like doing that on the side. And then when eventually that didn't like work out because we both got tired of it and it was just more of a chore than something we like loved. Like I moved on to like other side stuff. Like, so I got my real estate license because I said, okay, maybe, you know, I can be a real estate agent and that's my way out. And I realized quickly I didn't like that either. Mm-hmm. And so I tried a couple other things, but all my 20s, I was just thinking, wow, like I need to find a way like to escape the rat race because I knew I didn't want to be there forever. And like I had that ambition and, you know, it wasn't until my early 30s that I really, really started to understand or want to try like a new way to go about reaching freedom.
So what was the moment, you know, thinking about this whole dream driving journey, what was the moment where you decided that you were going to invest in, not invest in, but start moving towards financial independence?
So I was 31 and as you can see, like I missed my mark in terms of like quitting my job. So I was 31, still commuting and my commute was longer at this time because I'd moved further into Brooklyn and I was pregnant with my first son. And it took me, I'm like telling the truth here, it took me like 4 hours to get home. And I was pregnant. And again, that's not a typical like commute day, but it just took, that day was like so just devastating because it like all came to head. Like, you know, it was all bubbling up in me that, you know, all this time I was trying to figure something out, trying to like, you know, be creative. And I thought I had to like create this huge company and nothing really ever worked. And so here I am now, I'm starting my family. I'm pregnant for the first time and there's a 4-hour commute. And I said to myself, like, I do not want to live the rest of my life this way. And, you know, someone could say, well, you know, it's just the commute. Why don't you just like work closer to where you live? But I knew even then it wasn't like the commute itself. It was just the fact that I was like toiling away at a job, which I know wasn't like for me. It wasn't what I was using my best. I wasn't my best at. And it was at that moment that like I had my breakdown, cried in the car, cried when I got home. And so it, I think, awakened me. So I was more sleepwalking at that point through life because I figured, oh, you know, I guess I missed my mark. I didn't get to quit and, you know, do whatever I wanted after 30. I'm still working. So I guess I just have to like do what everyone else is doing and work forever. I think that moment in the car where I had that realization, like there is no way I can do this now that I'm starting a family, really put me on the path to find out more. I said, there has to be something else out there. And so I started to like just, you know, Google, look at podcasts, read books about, okay, quitting the rat race, how to, you know, maybe retire early, quote unquote, before it was like a thing, you know, that's so popular now. And I just like fell down this rabbit hole of like podcasts and blogs about people reaching financial independence and retiring early. And these were like regular everyday people. They weren't like necessarily millionaires or born into money. They were teachers. They were engineers. They were people who just worked and were very smart with their money and they were still able to reach freedom. So I was like, if they can do something like that, I know I can too.
Now, first of all, I love that this moment happened in a car, right? It's so fitting. Dreams and drive. And that moment for you was in the car. But, you know, like, what was the first step then? Like, you did the research. You said, all right, this is going to be my new goal. How did you start making it a reality? Because for a lot of us, it's like we have these ideas, we have these desires for ourselves, but it's the execution where we sometimes, you know, aren't able to complete. So talk us through those first few months of, you know, starting your financial independence journey.
Right. So that's really actually, it's good to like put myself back there because I'd say initially, even at like 31, when I first started to just have this feeling, I didn't necessarily like jump on it and like, create Journey to Launch, which is my platform now. I was just like reading, kind of like sitting with it, understanding that there was more to do. And then actually like a year later, I really started to get into podcasts and specifically like the financial independence, personal finance stuff and got inspired. So I was like, there's so many people sharing their stories. And I felt like there was like a missing story. There was a missing voice in that space. And so I said, you know what, I'm just going to start something that shares my journey. And initially it's funny because Journey to Launch initially started out as I just wanted to like share like the complete journey. It wasn't going to be necessarily just like finances, but I realized that I always had a knack for finances. So I never always did everything right, but I did a lot of good things to put me to like to the position where I was.
What kind of good things were you doing?
So when I first graduated college, so I was working that internship, making, good money. I was saving a lot of that. And I was able to buy my first property in Dumbo, so in Brooklyn.
Ooh, that's a wonderful neighborhood. Like that neighborhood now, I don't know what it was like when you graduated, but I know now you can't get anything down there. It's like the spot.
Right. It's like the most expensive place, like most to buy real estate in Brooklyn and New York, I think, maybe not New York, but it's a very expensive place to live. But when I was looking at places, what really drove me there was I was trying to buy like a brownstone in like Bed-Stuy, Fort Greene, but the market was at an all-time high at that point and I couldn't afford anything. And I saw like this advertisement for new developments in Dumbo. And I grew up, maybe like 10 minutes from Dumbo and never really went there because it's not what it is today. So for people who are not in New York, it stands for down under the Manhattan Bridge overpass. And it's like right by the Manhattan Bridge. It's by the piers. It's by the waterfront. It's very nice. But back then there was like nothing. And they had like this sales office that showed like, it was like really just like this big, like empty, like block that showed here's a development plan for, what we're building here. And you can get in, you can buy a condo. And the cheapest condo that I could barely afford at the time was a studio. And so I remember I went into contract for a condo pre-construction. And so by the time it was built. So 2 years later, I had enough money then to close on it. And with some help from my mom, was able to close on it and moved into Dumbo at 24 years old. And so that was like one of the other things that I said. So apart from getting this internship within Rhodes at this company, buying my first like real estate property also put me on a really good path because now I owned real estate. And then by the time it closed, it had appreciated so much. It was worth so much more money. So I was like, so things like that I did really, solidified kind of this like path that I was on that I didn't even know I was on, this like financial independence path that I'm now like, really, really have taken on.
So what was the plan for you and your husband, right? Because I know you guys were able to save over $169,000 in just 2 years. Like, did you guys sit down and say, all right, I have this goal. This is how we're going to make it happen. Like, what was that conversation like?
Yeah. So going back to kind of like the journey for like me starting like the blog. So initially Journey to Launch was just going to be a blog. I was just going to share how I was, going to save and invest because I said, you know what, let me do this to be more accountable. Like, let me just share this story. And so I started to like get tips and tools from like other people who were doing stuff. So learning about pre-tax retirement accounts and different types of accounts that you can save. And if you saved X amount each year, you'd have this amount in 10 years. So started to formulate that and share that. And so that really started me getting a lot of feedback of like, wow, how are you doing this? And so to go back to your point, my husband and I, so my husband's a teacher. He's a New York City teacher. And one of the things that we found out that he had access to that I didn't know before starting the journey was he had access to multiple pre-tax retirement accounts. So what that did was allow us to save like a lot more than like, the average person. Because typically as the average person, if you're working for a company, you only have access to one pre-tax retirement account, like 401k or 403b plan. And you can only save $18,500. But if you have access to two, like my husband does, because he's a teacher, he can save double the amount. So when I found that out, I was like, you know what? We make decent money. We make good money for living in New York City. It's the two of us. At the time, I think we had our one child and I was pregnant with my second. So I was like, we need to start changing the way we spend, and we need to make saving and investing a priority because I do not intend to work in this job like for the rest of my life. And so we quickly changed our strategy, became more conscious with our money, started budgeting and investing really aggressively to be able to save that much money.
Was it an easy sell to your husband? Because I feel like sometimes in relationships, like, someone may be a saver and someone may be the spender, but was he like on game with the plan from day one?
Definitely not. Because, this was like a big change for him, because I think a lot of what happens too, and which is why I was like so compelled to like bring my story to like more people, was when I was listening to these podcasts, like there were not a lot of people who like sounded like me or looked like me doing this. Now there are, but they weren't like necessarily in the spotlight showing that they were doing it. And so like for myself and even for my husband, like, like he's Haitian, his parents, Haitian immigrants, and like simple, very simple, like people, like, so the whole thought, this American dream of you come here, you work as hard as you can until you can't work anymore, and you buy the house, you have the kids, and you do what society kind of tells you to do. So I think he was operating under that framework for the most part, because when I came home and I was like, listen, like there's this thing and people are quote unquote retiring early and reaching this place where they don't have to actively work for money, because they're saving, they're investing, and they can do whatever they want. They can travel, they can start businesses, and he was just like, okay, like what does that like mean, right? And then especially when I had to tell him that, listen, if we want to make these things happen. So the main thing I think, because people listening might say, your dream drivers might be saying, okay, like maybe I'm in a relationship, or how can I frame this so it works for me? And one of the things that I did was, just because like I had this epiphany and I knew that I wanted to reach this goal, doesn't mean that like he wanted to reach it, right? Like he had to come on board on his own time, and like it had to be something he wanted. So I made sure when I came home and I told him about like this idea, that I was taking his goals into consideration too. And for him, he wanted to keep working. Like he's fine with like working. Like he can't really see it another way in terms of like, if, he were to travel the world 24/7, he doesn't want to do that. And so when I came and talked to him about this, I asked him, listen, like what type of life do you want to live today that we're both happy with? And what type of lifestyle do we want to live when we're older? Do you want to always work? Like, do you want to have a chance to retire early? And I think when I framed it like that, he got more excited about it. And I showed him a bunch of spreadsheets. So I said to him, listen, if we save and invest this much over this amount of time, like we could be millionaires, by X amount of date. And that excited him. So that also really helped him getting on board.
I love it. Like you had to actually physically show him what his life could be like. It's kind of like sales, right? A good salesperson gives you the life that you want, that you didn't know you needed, right?
Right. And sometimes, honestly, all it takes is like to see someone who looks like you, or someone you can relate to. Maybe they don't look like you, right? Maybe they just part of their story you can relate to. So I remember just sending him blogs here and there, and he's not totally into like this personal finance stuff. But what is good is that like he trusts me and he loves me. And so I think what helps is that like having a partner where your goals are for the most part aligned, but you also respect each other, because he saw how hard I was working. He saw, I was pregnant now. We're on our second kid. And it was just like, listen, he knew that like, if I were to keep this up, like if I didn't find an outlet or something else, that I wouldn't be able to sustain like, and be happy. And I think for that reason, and him knowing that I want to also make sure his goals are also being achieved, like made him feel a lot more comfortable with getting on board.
Dream drivers, I hope you guys are taking tips, taking notes here. Let's talk a little bit about Journey to Launch, right? So what made you, like, what was the decision for you? I know you said it started out as a blog, but then why did you shift into it being a podcast and the platform that you're building now? Yeah,
so it started out as a blog. I was writing blogs every week, and I found it hard to actually get the articles out every week. And I was such an avid like podcast listener. So at this time I still had the long commute.
What year was this? Just to position ourselves.
Yeah. So this was like maybe 2 years. So I started the blog like 3 years ago, but I didn't really get serious about it until like 2 years ago.
All right.
And I didn't start the podcast until 1 year ago.
All right. So we see like sometimes it takes time, right? The idea can evolve and it can take time to actually germinate. So, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So at the time I'm now still commuting, and my commute is like getting longer and longer at this point, just because traffic changes and whatever. And I was able to listen to a lot of podcasts. And because of that, I was getting inspired. I was getting motivated. And then I said to myself, well, I love the platform like that, like what podcasts can do. Like, why not start a podcast? I think that might be a better media form for me. And so I kind of just like surveyed my audience, and it's not like I had a huge audience at the time, but I did have people who were interested in my journey. And so I said, hey, like, would you guys be interested in a podcast? And they were like, yeah, like you should definitely start one. And so I ended up starting the podcast a little over a year ago. So 2017, like July 2017 is when I first launched it. And yeah, I've been going ever since.
What was the biggest challenge for you in just building the brand and launching the podcast? And how did you work through it?
Right. I think managing it all. And so right now, you know, I have like 3 kids, husband. And at the time when I was building the podcast up to where it is today, I had the job still, so the full-time job, and then the long commute. And so that, as you can imagine, it was a lot to handle. And I said to myself, like, and here's the thing, I think what's interesting is that it's almost like when you like kind of wake up, like when you realize that there's like so much more to life and you don't want to do the status quo and you want to like walk your own path. It's like a gift and a curse because your eyes are open, right? Like you're excited, but then you kind of realize like, whoa, like I'm kind of like stuck in this framework of people around me. They either don't get it or, you know, they're not going to understand. So I think just for me, branching out and like working, like staying up to 2 a.m., you know, every night, especially this last year when I was pregnant with my daughter that I just gave birth to, like working on Journey to Launch while like pursuing this like goal. And then like, it was almost like I was living double life. Then I would go to work every day and I have like this like, you know, corporate job where I have to be on for because it's, you know, it's like high intensity, but then like juggling everything else in between was like really difficult. But I knew that like my dream at that point. So as soon as I found out that I was pregnant with my 3rd child, I said to myself, like, you know what, this is an opportunity here. Like perhaps you can build Journey to Launch into something where it allows you to reach that freedom mark sooner. Because, well, one thing I didn't mention was that when I first started Journey to Launch, I had this goal of reaching my financial independence mark at 40 years old.
Okay.
And so I said to myself, and
you're 35 now.
Well, I'm 35 now. When I really started to like the blog and write about it, I was 33. So I said, it's going to take me 7 years to reach financial independence. Follow me along the journey. Then like, you know, a couple years later, I'm pregnant with my 3rd child. And I say to myself, you know what if there's a way for you to reach freedom now? Because you built up your platform, you know, Journey to Launch to be to a point where people are interested. You know, you're getting more media coverage. You are helping more people. So I started to coaching clients one-on-one. I had a couple courses helping people understand their finances. And so the potential was all there. And I said to myself, you're pregnant now. What if there was a way in which you can build this up so that you can do Journey to Launch full time and still work towards your financial goals, but do it in a way which provides you like freedom today. And once I had that thought, like I said to myself, you know what, you are going to make this work. And so my whole pregnancy, I was grinding, I was working to make that a reality and to where I could walk away from, you know, my safe, very well paying job so that I can follow like this path of freedom and entrepreneurship.
Before we get into the how of how you actually did that, you know, quick question. How do you calculate how long it's going to take you to reach financial independence? Or like for people listening in, like how do you even go about figuring out what you need to know in order to achieve that goal? Like, is there a formula? Is there like certain things you need to take into account?
Yeah, like there's a lot of things you can take into account, but I'd say probably like maybe just this like simplest, like for any listeners, it's really all about your expenses and yes, your income too. But if you look at it as, so if your expenses are really high, like what it takes for you to live your life, right? Okay. So I don't know, maybe that's $30,000 a year, $40,000, $80,000 a year, whatever that number is for you and your family. Figure that out. And then there's like a simple calculation. This is just a quick calculation. You can multiply that by 25. It kind of gives you the about number you would need to have saved up to then reach your independence number. And what that means is, so let's just say you need $40,000 a year to live. If you multiply that by 25, you get $1 million. The idea of that is if you were to draw down on that portfolio every year at like a 4% rate. So I don't want to get too technical, right? But you draw down on it every year, it will return you $40,000. So you'd be able to live off of your saved investments, your accumulated investments without having to actively, I keep saying that in air quotes, work again. And so that's kind of how like the quick way to figure out how much you need. But of course, there are other factors that come into play. Like, so for example, in my scenario, my husband would still work. And so that would help a lot with the expenses because we would still have his income. Or let's say you have a pension that you can expect in 20, 30 years. That might help with reducing how much you need to save. So there are a lot of ways to like kind of figure it out. But in general, just think of it as the more money you need to live. So the higher your expenses, and the more you're going to need to have saved up to reach this independence mark. And then that's why like all these triggers come into play where, okay, so can you make more money? Can you reasonably spend less? Because if you can widen that gap between how much you make and how much you spend, and then reach your financial goals by like saving, investing, you'll be able to kind of map out, okay, if I invest X amount each year, by year 10, by year 15, I will have this much saved. And so, you kind of like map it out as you go, and you see how much you can contribute to your goals.
You should see my face right now. I'm like, you know how there be question marks all over like the screen? I think this is a good time to plug, like, do you have any resources on your site? Or I know you are a certified financial education instructor. Like, do you help your clients do this if they are having trouble working through this formula?
Yeah. And so I would say, like, I know I just went through the formula, but don't let that be like what like overwhelms you.
I'm like, what?
Like, wait, what? Don't let that overwhelm you. Listen, I think at the end of the day, because so many of us are starting at different points in our journeys, like, yes, the idea is to understand like the big concept, but we all like have all these little things we also need to accomplish, like getting out of debt, like getting, certain goals accomplished first. So yes, like my podcast in general talks about, like, there are specific episodes that talk about how to reach it, what it means. And then I talk to people who are reaching it, or who have reached it, and how they did it. And then on my site, of course, like there are resources there. And so, yeah, there's information which like you can get into, but I don't want to overwhelm people. I think ideally, if you're trying to get your finances in order to reach financial independence, it takes small steps. So don't get overwhelmed by the big picture of it. Look at the things you can do today, which is, curbing expenses that you don't need, like cutting, stuff that don't matter out, making more money, and then at least starting to save and invest towards, it could be, okay, I need an emergency fund. I need to invest more into my retirement funds. So there's the little steps that will take you to the big steps. Don't get too overwhelmed though. To just take your time and do it one by one.
Why do you think, just being aware of our finances and what our future finances could be, why is it so important, especially for millennials?
Oh my gosh, it's so important. I don't understand like why this is not even like why more people don't. It's not that more people don't care. I think finances, like money, is a tool to get you what you want in life. Like if you look at anything you want, whether that's to travel more, be home with family, take time off of work, all of working where you work, all that is like, money is driving that. Like, cause if you had enough money, your life may look different. Like, let's say you said, I don't need to work at this job because I have enough money to do what I'm able to do. Right. Like your life may look completely different. So then if you understand that, then you know that how you manage the money that you have now is extremely important, because it then will allow you to live the type of life you really want to live. And I think what happens for most people is that because so many of us start at such a deficit. And so whether that's because we weren't taught about finances growing up, or we graduate with a lot of debt, or we don't even want to like talk about it because it seems overwhelming, right? Like, so, but it's like when you start the path, when you start understanding like, wow, like even if I just pay off this debt, it puts me in a better position. Even if I save up, an emergency fund that helps cover major expenses, I'm more secure in my life. I feel more security. I'm more confident. That puts me in a better position. And so I just feel like in general, like finances is like the thread for everyone. Like it really allows us to live our best lives if we understand it. And so that's why I feel so compelled to help people figure that out more, because if you did, like your life could be so much better.
So I interviewed Jen Sincero of You Are Badass at Making Money. Have you heard of that book?
Yes.
So like I asked her this question. I'm going to ask it to you because it's something that like, I don't know if I'm just like ultra sensitive. Maybe this is like my liberal arts education, sociology getting in the mix. Do you think we're operating from a place of privilege when we talk about financial independence, right? Like, as Americans, as people who are, well, like I would say like we're in positions that we can possibly reach financial independence, right? Like, how do you think about this, like in the global context? I know I may be getting deep here, but I just sometimes wonder, like, is this something that's achievable for all, or is like, I don't know. It's just like, do you get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, I think that's a great question and that's why I wanted to like, that's why I started Journey to Launch, or why I'm now like spreading this information to more people, because I do believe it can be a goal that's achievable for many people.
Okay.
Now, here's like, I believe everyone should be on this journey. And I'm going to tell you why. Because yes, the overall goal, right? If you do your math, like someone probably like right now is like saying, okay, I spend this much a year. Wait, I got to multiply by 25. I'm gonna need how much to like save? Like that's a lot of money, you know, like, and so many people are starting late. Like you don't start investing or saving towards retirement because you didn't think it was important, you know, in your 20s or 30s. So maybe you're starting really late and you don't even see how you can achieve it. And then, you know, we have people in all like other areas of the world, you know, who are not making enough money to even like pay their expenses, you know,
to live, right? It's like,
right. And so I do believe that, yes, part of this comes from a place where, yes, if you make the more money you make, the more knowledge you have, the easier it will be for you to reach this goal. It doesn't make it that it's easy, because it still involves discipline and some work. But I think we should acknowledge, though, that if you are born of a certain background, or if you have help and you have people that support you in that way, or like myself, I have a husband that, you know, like, you know, in my financial independence plan, he still works. Some people are single. They don't have that option, right? So, yes, I want to acknowledge that everyone's journey is going to look different. But if you start this journey, because the journey is going to be long, but my goal is not to tell people, oh, you're only looking out for the, you know, the end goal of financial independence. The actual journey itself, it's what's important. So whether that journey now is you're going to tackle paying off debt, or you're going to tackle saving for maybe, you know, you want to invest in a house, like all that stuff, like you're going to start tackling on your path to financial independence, and it will put you in a better place than if you never started. So is it attainable for every single person who starts the path? You know, I don't know. I never make that promise to anyone. But what I do know is if you start it, all the principles that it takes for you to reach it will put you in a better position. And I feel like I'm like a prime example for that, because if it weren't for me starting on this path, right? Let's just say I would have just like kept, you know, living, enjoying my life, you know, in my 20s, 30s, and just like working until whatever. I wouldn't be in a position today to achieve the freedom that I have now, because what I did was, because I saved, paid off debts, invested. Now, you know, I had that decision when I had my daughter, my third child now, that I said to myself, you know what? I want to take some time off of work. Like, I don't want to go back to work. I want to pursue my passions more. And I was able to do that because we saved up enough money and put our finances in a better position. And so, no, I'm not financially independent yet, but because I worked my way to this point and did like, you know, the little steps to get me here, I can achieve a level of freedom today. And I think that's possible for anyone if they just start tackling the small steps one by one.
So let's talk about the announcement you made in early September. You quit your job. Why?
Yes, I was alluding to that a bit like throughout the conversation. But yeah, I ended up not returning back to work after my maternity leave, which was kind of what I was working up to be able to do. And I did that because I also feel like, again, the end goal of financial independence, where, you know, I don't have it all figured out. You know, I don't have my number yet. We don't have, you know, our millions in the bank just yet. But what we did was put ourselves in a position where we saved enough where we could cover expenses while I take this break. And, you know, I'm a mom of 3 now and my kids are pretty young. And so the commute along with working full time and running Journey to Launch was a lot. And I said to myself, like, I had to give something up. Like, there's no way I can do it all. And, you know, the thing on my list, the only thing that I was like willing to give up was my full-time job. And so I made that leap. And yeah, I'm excited about it.
So how is that impacting your financial independence journey?
Oh, it's definitely impacted it a lot. And it's interesting because, you know, some people say, like, if you're building up a business on the side, you know, you have to wait until it's earning X amount of income before you leave. And I didn't have that time to wait, because I was really, like I said, at a position where I was running on fumes. Like, there was no way I could continue to run Journey to Launch, which was like a full-time business. So I would get home by 6 o'clock, you know, be with the kids until maybe 7:30, get them to bed, and then from like 7:30 to 2, work on Journey to Launch. And I couldn't do that onward, you know, forever. And so I made a big decision that, you know, I could stay at this job that pays me well and be unhappy, miserable, and not enjoying life, But I'd be reaching all my financial goals. And by the time I turned 40, I'll definitely probably be able to have saved what I needed to quit forever. And, I still intend to work. Even when I say I'm going to reach my financial independence mark at 40, I would still work doing what I want. But I could have stayed on that path. But I realized really quickly that it wasn't just all about money, and that I wanted to also enjoy the journey. And so me taking this leap can actually delay my financial independence journey. Like maybe it will take me longer, because right now Journey to Launch isn't like making as much money or consistent income, so I'm at the point where I'm building that up. Right now we're taking a pause on investing and saving, because now we're paying our expenses and I'm figuring things out at the moment. So it may take longer because we're taking a break in investing, right, and saving, but it can also accelerate the journey, because this is what I believe wholeheartedly, all your like dream drivers listening, is that we have these passions and we want to do all these things. And sometimes when you like take that leap, the opportunities that open up for you are tremendous, because you're walking in your purpose. And so maybe I'll reach it faster, because now I'm like doing something I love. I'm bringing my value into this world. And so who knows? I think that's what I love about sharing my journey too, is that you guys will get to see kind of what happens.
What's a feeling that you felt since making this announcement that you didn't expect that you would feel?
I definitely was like scared of like taking this leap, because it was like, it just seemed like I've always dreamed of being able to do this, but I just didn't know that it could actually be done until I did it. And so I think for the most part, I still get like, just when I look at like our bank accounts maybe, and then like, especially like when I used to see like the checks from my job come in and that's like stopping, like, whoa, like I'm giving up this much money. Like, and so, the doubts rush in of like, is this the right thing? Should I have done this? You have 3 kids, you have a mortgage, you have so much going on. And then I have to kind of like step outside of that fear and that ego and remember that, you did plan for this. You did plan for the worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is I go back and get a job in a couple of years. So I feel like that doubt definitely rushes in and out, and I have to kind of like shake myself out of it and say, you just have to keep moving forward.
Right. That's one thing that I've also learned too along my own journey, is like, you can always pivot. And I think sometimes we forget that we are behind the steering wheel, right? As drivers, you can turn the steering wheel, right? Like if you aren't going the direction that you think you need to go, or if you end up being at like a dead end or, the edge of a cliff, you can reverse, you can go into neutral, and you can even park sometimes. And I think sometimes that's what we all need to realize and embrace, that it's a living journey, right? The journey to launch for all of us is not going to be straight. It's kind of like that meme that everyone has seen about like what the day in the life of an entrepreneur is like, the ups and downs or whatever.
Right.
And I think I know for me, that's what's been so like amazing about this journey, right?
Yeah, I definitely think that that's the thing. Like the beauty unfolds as you take your steps. Like you leap and the net will appear. It sounds so corny, but it's true. And I don't like advocate that everyone like, just leave their jobs if they don't have a plan. Like definitely I'm not saying that. I just feel like that you just be surprised. Like if you put the work in and you follow your purpose and you plan what you can accomplish.
Thinking about Journey to Launch, and I wanted to ask you this earlier, but I forgot. Like, what do you think was like the biggest thing that helped you just grow your community? Because I know a lot of us are trying to grow different types of communities, but what's that thing that has helped you?
I think being relatable to people. And so I don't have it all figured out. I am, I still have my self-doubt and imposter syndrome kick in, and I'm not afraid to share that. And so I think because so many of us like feel the same way, that I think that's helped me connect with a lot of my audience, because they also feel like, okay, I don't have it all figured out either. And I think people want to like, they want inspiration. They want to like be taught something, but they also just want to feel heard and connected.
And from a business perspective, what do you think is the best business lesson that you've learned throughout this journey?
I'd say delivering like consistent value is very important. So I give to my community, and I try to really put them first in everything. And I think that is shown and they see that. And so that helps when it comes to like sharing the content and growing the platform.
And last question, Jamila, what motivates you or what keeps you going when you feel like giving up? Because I know like these journeys are not always like days filled with sunshine. So what's that thing for you?
Okay, my kids, right? I think my kids definitely help me see that like there's so much more to this like world. And, you know, if I'm having a bad day or bad thoughts, like it's bigger than just me. Like I'm doing this to show them like, you know, that they can walk their own path too. And I think also just realizing that it is just like a bad day. Cause there are moments where I feel like everyone can probably hopefully relate to this is that, you know, there'll be times where you feel like you got it all like figured out. You like are so optimistic and you feel so good. And then there are the times like, you're like, what's going on? What am I doing? And so when I have, those like down times, I just try to remember that it's just temporary and that I'm not going to sit in it. I'm not going to dwell in it. Like I'll let it pass through me, but like, let's not like make any rash decisions or be too hard on myself. Like, let's just make it pass. And so I try to do that a lot.
All right. This has been such a fun conversation, Jamila. Let's go to our lightning round. You know how this is. You know, I'm going to give you a prompt and I want you to tell me the first word that comes to mind. And remember, we're sticking with our whole dreams and drive metaphor. Okay. You ready?
Yep.
All right. First word, park.
McDonald's. Don't actually say that.
Reverse.
Possibilities.
Neutral.
Patience.
Drive.
Excitement.
All right. I like those. And I'm going to change up the keys to success, right? Since we're talking about financial independence and, you know, really making sure that we're being financially literate, I want you to give me 3 keys to financial independence success that you think every dream driver needs to have before they hit the road. Like, what's that thing that you really need to keep in mind as you're headed out on these journeys?
Yeah. So I would say mindset. So first is believing that you can accomplish it. Really, it's again, sounds a little woo-woo and corny, but belief in yourself, belief that you deserve the life you're dreaming of is very important. And then the other thing is the practical stuff. So learning how to budget, understanding all your expenses and what's coming in. Like you need to do that. And I'd say the third thing is like the inspiration to keep going because, you know, like don't compare. Like I know like, okay, I was able to save and invest $169,000, but that might not be what you can do. Maybe you do more, but maybe you'll do less. I think just make sure that it's all relative to you. So don't get demotivated or down on yourself. You need to keep yourself inspired. And so that's why I love like just podcasts and blogs and, you know, the internet is bad for a lot of reasons, but it's great for a lot of reasons because you get to connect and be inspired through so many avenues that you wouldn't be. So just make sure you are consistently keeping yourself inspired and motivated on the journey and you're not comparing yourself to what other people can do.
Do you have any like favorite resources you want to share, whether it's books, podcasts, blogs that really have helped you? Yeah.
So, I mean, in general, I'd say, you know, there are a lot of great personal finance podcasts out there. So I know since people listening to this like podcasts, I'd say maybe start there. So there's mine, of course, Journey to Launch, and there are a bunch of others. Like I love the Choose FI podcast. Now they talk specifically about financial independence. You have Bola from Clever Girl Finance. So she talks more, you know, about practical finance stuff and has a great range of topics. There's so many like really like just a good podcast. Like I would say once you like go down a rabbit hole, like of one podcast, you know how it is, Raina and listeners, you'll start to see maybe suggested podcasts you should listen to, or you hear guests that are from other podcasts and you just check those out.
So what does being a dream driver mean to you, Jamila?
It means really going after your goals, no matter how much they scare you. And they will scare you because there will be a lot of doubts. But I think in general, it's just you keep going. So like you said, if you got to put it in park, reverse, neutral, if you got to make that left turn when you thought you were going to make a right turn, it's okay. I think the biggest thing that we all can do is just to keep going.
Thank you. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you online if they want to connect, check out your podcast, or learn more about you, Jamila?
Sure. So you can go to JourneyToLaunch.com and you can find my podcast wherever you listen to this podcast, Journey to Launch. I'm also on all social media as Journey to Launch. I love connecting. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I actually have a Facebook group if you want to join that. You'll find that if you go to the Facebook page, Journey to Launch. So yeah, there's a bunch of ways. So reach out. I love connecting and talking with people.
And I'll definitely link to everything in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Jamila. This has been been so much fun. And I've learned so much too. I got to start making my plan now. I got to figure out the number that I got to multiply by 25.
Right. Well, thanks for having me so much, Raina. This was great.
All right, so that's a wrap for episode 181 with Jamila. I hope that you enjoyed hearing her dream driving journey as well as her keys to success. If you enjoyed the tips that Jamila shared with us on how we can reach financial independence, please share this with a friend. There are so many people out here who could really benefit from hearing Jamila's tips, her strategies. You know, the best way to share would be to screenshot this and post it on your social media, whether that's Instagram stories, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you are social. Please share this. You can even text it to people, guys. And make sure when you're sharing that you're tagging us. We're Dreams and Drive across the board. And you can also use the hashtag Dreams and Drive as well on social media. If you have not already subscribed to Dreams and Drive, this is your first time listening and you just love what you hear, you want to hear more episodes, right? So please hit subscribe wherever you're listening. And go back and listen to episodes before to really just keep this dream driving momentum going forward. If you want today's show notes, they are available at JourneyToLaunch.com, and you just have to click on episode 181. And if you want to join our Dreams and Drive Facebook group and find other dream drivers just like you, just go to DreamsandDrive.com/Facebook, or you can search Dream Driver Mastermind the next time you're logged on. I want to remind people that our Dreams and Drive merchandise is still on sale. So if you have not already copped yourself a hoodie, a t-shirt, or a crewneck sweatshirt, just go to DreamsandDrive.com/shop. That's DreamsandDrive.com/shop. And if it's not in your budget to buy something right now, but you want to get some free Dreams and Drive gear, I do have Dreams and Drive cell phone backgrounds and desktop screensavers for free. Just go to DreamsandDrive.com/free and you can download the screensavers and backgrounds there. Help support Dreams and Drive, get other people knowing about the brand. So I appreciate it if you guys rock your screensavers and share them and show them off to the world. I also want to say thank you to everybody who has been pitching. So currently I am looking for 2019 guests for the show. So if you feel like you have what it takes and you feel like your story is inspiring, or you feel like, you know, your story will resonate with other dream drivers, pitch me. Just go to DreamsandDrive.com/pitch, DreamsandDrive.com/pitch. I read them all. I'm not always able to respond to everybody, but if I really love your story, I will get back to you and we will talk about you possibly coming on the show. All right, so keep dreaming, keep driving, and remember, as Jamila said in this episode, go after your goals no matter how much they scare you. You heard it from Jamila. This journey to financial independence has not always been easy. It's not always, just a walk in the park. There are moments that have scared her, but as she said, you have to take the leap and the net will appear. I hope that all of you guys have a great week. I hope that you guys are inspired to keep moving, keep pushing towards your own goals. I'm going to give you guys an update on some things that I've been working on. I know you guys will be excited to hear from that. So I'll talk to you again in episode 182. Bye, guys.